Welcome, everyone, and happy Thursday. It is noon Eastern time here, right outside of Philadelphia in the booming metropolis known as Ambler, Pennsylvania. This, of course, is your favorite show on the internet, Talent Experience Live. It is your weekly look at everything that you need to know in talent acquisition, recruiting, talent management, human resources, and everything in between. I am your host, Devin Foster, and Talent Experience Live is proudly brought to you by the good folks here at Phenom, whose purpose is to help a billion people find the right work. That is why we host this stream every single week. It's why we put on great webinars, why we have a fantastic blog, why we have great explainer videos, we host events, we go to events, and of course, we do week-long industry-specific events like we did last week with Industry Week. Now, we do all of those wonderful things, but the real way that we help a billion people find the right work is through our Intelligent Talent Experience platform, which helps candidates find the right fit faster, recruiters achieve next-level productivity, employees evolve in their current roles and beyond, and managers, well, they get to really get better data and analytics through automation and AI. That's right. I mentioned AI. All of the Intelligent Talent Experience platform is powered by it. So if you're interested in any of those things, do not walk to phenom.com where you can learn more. But before you do that, we have a very exciting show. As I mentioned last week, we did Industry Week, which was 5 full days of industry-specific content across 5 different industries. It was truly something awesome. We did a promotional episode the week before to kind of give folks a sneak peek, and now we are back again to really relive it all in less than 60 minutes. Now, each event was about an hour, each day was about an hour and a half long, Monday through Friday. I mentioned it focused on specific industries like retail, like hospitality, like logistics and transportation, like finance, like healthcare, and everything in between. But let's be honest, people are busy. You probably weren't able to attend all of the days. And if you were able to attend one of the days, you maybe were listening to it in the background or weren't paying close attention. So I am here to really give you highlights of what happened and entice you to go back to phenom.com to register once again for Industry Week and watch it all on demand, because, we've seen the end of Netflix. We've watched everything that there is to offer on Apple TV. Today's Thursday, which means tomorrow's Friday, and there's no better way than to kick back on the couch and watch a little bit of Industry Week. And today, we are going to show you the reasons why, because we had a plethora of guests all across all industries. They were fantastic. They were customers. They were industry leaders and everything in between. And we're going to go through it one by one right now. All of our guests, we're going to start off with day one, which was focused on the retail sector. And our first guest was Adam Lukowski, who is executive director of the National Retail Federation, or NRF. And really, he came off Industry Week with a bang. He started about how talent acquisition in the past hasn't had a seat at the table when it comes to leadership. They've really had to fight for their way, to have a say in things, to have a say in technologies that a say in technology that is purchased, And the way to do this is really through using data and getting ahead of future problems. So without any further hesitation, here's Adam from the NRF, our day one kickoff speaker.
How can TA be at the seat with business leaders, right? And historically, TA was sometimes an order taker, right? Like, we had open roles, we need to fill positions. Here, go do that. And I know some of our more progressive, advanced TA brands are finding their seat at the table to influence the business before it makes a decision. So a couple examples there, 5 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, when retailers were just dropping distribution centers in places that made sense logistically, TA then had to try to staff those. And TA leaders are like, if you'd have asked me prior to picking the location, I could have told you there's very little talent in that space, and there are 6 other distribution centers that will all be competing for talent. So here's probably the wage that you'll need to pay, or some of the other incentives you'll have to do to get workers there. A second one is looking at your data. So we had a brand who they were being told that that stores were not getting the right talent or the right applicant flow for their stores. And the TA leader that shared was they actually looked across their entire store portfolio and broke up the data and were like, well, in this 15% of the stores, you have the applicant flow, but you don't have the hiring manager or the store manager calling the talent, making the offers. In this other group, you have them doing that, but there's a very high decline rate from the store manager or that hiring leader. So maybe there's not a correct balance for that business leader of what they're looking for. And then, here is a subset of stores that is not getting the applicant flow. So as we think about solutions, let's make sure we're planning appropriately and saying, all right, let's move more of our marketing budget for these roles to this pocket of stores that is really missing the applicant flow versus doing it across all of the stores. And you as business leader probably need to have that conversation with your local business leaders to figure out why aren't they making those interviews or making those offers at the same rate that their peers are across the business. So those are just two examples where we're seeing TA leaders come to the table and really influencing the decision, influencing the business leader and helping them better operate their business versus just go take that order. We also saw a lot of that in the conversation around remote work versus in-person work, and that will continue to evolve as brands look at return to office, as brands look at the current economic and labor landscape of what they can do and can't do, because we know many business leaders want people in offices. In some areas, the competition for that talent is really aggressive and not everyone is requiring in person. So how does that TA leader be able to show that like a blanket policy isn't necessarily in the best interest of certain kind of business leaders to help them then advocate for maybe a different policy that will help them better fill their positions. So that's like that's the one theme that we see is TA leaders getting ahead of problems, really using data to diagnose what's happening, and ultimately find the right solutions. The second big theme that we are seeing is taking that applicant experience and really thinking of it as if it's a customer experience. So retailers are really good at the marketing to consumers. They have their persona of their 3 to 4 kind of typical customers. And we're seeing retailers do the same thing. So they know who they're employing. They have a different persona for stores, for distribution centers and corporate, but even more so they have a variety of personas within that store base. And so as they're having conversations, how are they talking about the brand? How are they highlighting specific benefits that are relevant to a 20-year-old versus maybe a 60-year-old? And they're looking for different things. And I just use that as an easy example to understand.
Adam's session was absolutely fantastic. He talked about something that we've talked about here at Phenom for quite a while, which is mimicking that retail experience for really candidates. And it's gone beyond just the e-commerce experience on your career site. He talked about continuing to follow up with candidates to ensure that folks get hired. And I think that's a lot like tracking your packages. I just tracked one of my packages that I ordered through the mail, ensuring that it gets here because I got a text message said it's going to be delivered later today. And I'm not going to be home. So hopefully it is still there when I get there. Moving right along, our second guest speaker during Retail Day was Kim Nicholas, who is GM of Talent Acquisition and Payroll at the Warehouse Group. She talked a lot about retention. I think when we think of retention in retail, oftentimes there is none, right? It has a huge churn rate, and it's really tough to get talent to stay there for the long haul. In this clip, she talks about some of her successes that she have. And let's be honest, they might surprise you. So without any further hesitation, here's Kim.
The other side of the question sort of around sort of retention, if I put it that way, that's always an interesting one for us. And we do a lot of internal mobility as well. But in retail, turnover really is high all the time. It's retail. It's the nature of what we do. But interestingly, I was looking at some data on our side and, we've actually dropped in our number of voluntary resignations by about 1 to 3% across all our brands over the last 5 months. And extra interestingly is that most of those sort of first 12-month tenures where we started to see a real increase of people churn and the uplift within that first year, That's actually dropped by 50% over the last 5 months of people leaving. So again, that's sort of a show of the market, I would say, in terms of that talent. But I'm hoping it's also got to do with the fact that we've been training our hiring managers and really wanting to uplift their recruiting and, that candidate experience piece for them. Our team's so lean that we rely so much on store managers to actually be that journey for people as they're applying for roles and going through the processes. So by training and coaching and the fact that, it's easier to do now because technology is better than it was, we're able to really do bite-sized training continuously throughout the year as well. So I'm hoping that's got to do with it a little bit as well.
Kim, it absolutely has something to do with it. 50% retention is, I think, something a lot of organizations will strive for, especially in the retail industry. One industry that also needs a lot of retention is, of course, hospitality, hotels, and restaurants. So as we move from retail into hospitality, I want to say the retail day was fantastic. We jumped into a lot of product focused things towards the end of the day. So if you're in that industry or you're looking to steal ideas from that industry, like Kim, who has a 50% retention rate with employees who've lasted over 12 months, definitely run to retail day. But moving right along to hospitality, hotels, and restaurants, our first guest was Debbie Wieland, who was education outreach and foundation director of the Texas Hotel and Lodging Association. And Debbie's conversation was interesting, not because it focused so much on talent acquisition as it stands right now, hiring people right now. It really focused on how it is a long journey, how you need to educate the youth on what opportunities are within your industry or even your business. When we think of hotels, which is something that she talks about a lot, we only traditionally think of two jobs, right? Maintenance and front desk. But there are so many more. She goes on to mention how if you are an accountant and you love numbers, they have accounting jobs within this industry. But don't take it from me, excuse me. Let's hear from Debbie a little bit more on future talent, having the skills that we can use now, and how to grow and also attract talent as well. Here's Debbie.
Well, we do have some future challenges in the industry, and I think technology is going to make a big impact and a lot of changes in our industry. And those are maybe more challenging for our existing staff members because our young people are cutting edge. They are learning about technology and know things that perhaps some of our current staff members, even our leadership staff members, don't know. And I think it's fabulous to bring those young people in and learn from them about the technology that's possible in the industry to improve productivity, improve our business, and even to help us with cost control in our industry. I would say that our young people are learning a lot about sustainability and eco-friendly practices. And so I think bringing them in, giving them opportunities to share their ideas about what we can do in our industry is really important. And right now, when I think about social media marketing, I think it's just an afterthought in many parts of our industry. And I love when I go and visit a hotel property and hear about an individual who has the sole responsibility of marketing on social media, because our students know how to do that. Our young people are such experts in that area, and they can really help us grow our businesses by utilizing the tools that they are just so comfortable with.
I love that. And I agree, like soft skills and creating experiences and finding people that are focused on customer service is so important. But that is where finding people that are technology natives that are going to change the industry and be able to understand that technology and find new ways to apply it is super, super important. I love that.
I loved Debbie's session, even though it terrified me a little bit. I have a 3-year-old at home. She can navigate a phone better than I can. And my job is in social media. So her talking about them being ready to step in and the youth of tomorrow really fill in some of the roles that we need today is a little horrifying. But nonetheless, it just means you have to continue to upskill. You have to continue to get better. And that's what I am doing today. Our next guest during hospitality, hotels, and restaurants was Mandy Wagner. She was she is, VP of HR operations at one of our favorite brands, Lifetime. And when we think of Lifetime, we oftentimes think of just brick and mortar kind of gyms, but they are so much more. She gets into all of the different areas that they are in and how they are venturing really into that kind of hotel and restaurants. When you think of gyms, they also offer food, shakes, smoothies. They have pool, jobs and everything in between. And what she really talks about is showcasing employer brand while hiring quickly. It almost seems challenging beyond all belief to say, hey, we need somebody in the door tomorrow. How do we get them here while still showcasing who we are? And also widening the hiring net, reaching candidates where they are, she mentions, is vital to her business as well. Because when you're hiring such a plethora of candidates, they're all interacting with your jobs, with your career site in many different ways. So she talks about how to diversify your hiring approach. But don't take it from me. Here's Mandy.
Prioritizing, some of these goals and strategies to overcome these recruiting challenges. First we need to consider this decentralized recruiting model that we have instituted here. We have approximately 1,500 hiring managers across our athletic country clubs who are responsible for the recruiting, the interviewing, the hiring process. However, that's not their primary responsibility. Serving our member is where their focus is. So our top priority in that strategy is really implementing innovative solutions and streamlining that process to increase the efficiency and effectiveness in that recruitment process. So with that in mind, I think some of the top goals that would really help us overcome some of these recruiting challenges are, first and foremost, putting our brand awareness and our employment brand at the forefront of what we're doing. Specifically, again, that challenge around hospitality brand perception. We've really focused on enhancing the way we bring that awareness to our job seekers, our talent pools, the candidates that we are attracting to Lifetime. And the focus has really been around sharing an authentic representation of what it is to be a team member at Lifetime, what that culture is that helps us attract that talent for, again, a variety of those positions across the industries, and really differentiate the brand that we have through a storytelling process too. With the challenge of high volume hiring and the speed to hire, really finding ways to hire quickly without impacting our candidate experience is a top goal of ours. Utilizing, customization of different processes, leveraging automation, really applying, different innovative solutions across our candidate journey are top in mind for us. And then I would say in regards to the challenge of just that wide spectrum of skills and talents that we're looking for, diversifying our recruitment channel strategy, where we can meet our candidates where they're at and really expand that outreach through various channels. So I'd say those are, some of the things that we've really, based on those challenges, had to focus our goals on the past year.
If you're interested in hearing any more from Mandy or Debbie, head on over to phenom.com, where you can watch all of these sessions on demand. As I mentioned, day 2, hospitality, hotels, and restaurants. There is a plethora of great insight in there and ideas that you can steal for your own organization as well. Now, what comes after hospitality, hotels, and restaurants? Well, I thought you'd never ask. Of course, it is healthcare. And we had a jam-packed day for healthcare. It is going through really a renaissance of hiring. They have a tremendous amount of folks leaving the industry, and they're struggling to get folks in the door. So day 3, healthcare, was one of my favorites. And our first guest was Jeremy Sadler, who's an executive director and CEO of the American Society for Healthcare Human Resources Administration, or ASHRA for short. Jeremy talked about, I can't believe we made it this far into the episode without mentioning this. He talked about AI and the trends in healthcare, not just how it is, assisting with overall healthcare, but how they're using it in the recruitment function to automate things. And then he also talks about something that we don't typically talk about here on TXL, the impact that unions is having on the industry. As I mentioned, a lot of senior folks in the industry are beginning to retire, are beginning to move to Florida, are beginning to enjoy the twilight of their lives. And other folks are beginning to unionize. So he talks about how automating and unionization is really changing the industry and how you should pay attention in order to be ahead for the future. So without any further hesitation, here's Jeremy.
What future trends do you think people should be thinking about?
Yeah, well, I mean, we talked about AI, so AI is going to play a role in everything that we do moving forward. Whether it's the competition for talent, our recruiters are going to be using AI tools. The adaptation of current roles to AI-centric roles or AI roles that are using AI. Our employee labor relations folks are going to be spending time adapting for AI in that space. Performance evaluation, talent pipelines, we'll be using AI technology to make sure that we have a stronger and stronger workforce through technology. As it relates to union organizing, there's been a big shift in the last couple of years in terms of who is organizing. Historically, healthcare has been organized in your nursing arena, in some of your other clinical services, in your support services, environmental and food, and those areas. And historically, and by and large, your clinical staff, your interns, your residents, your fellows, and your attending physicians have typically not been a group that has been organized. Much in the same way that in most of healthcare, professionals have not been organized. What we have seen in 2023 and has become very prevalent in 2024 is that more and more interns and fellows and residents are organizing. And if you look at the number of attending physicians and house staff physicians that have typically been organized, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 7%. However, in the last year and a half to 2 years, we are now looking at about 20% of our physicians in training and residents that are organized. And for healthcare leaders, you have to look at that and then understand that the dynamic is changing. The tide is rising on union support. And even if you don't have medical education happening within your institution and you don't have any organizing going on, with 20% of the population of those physicians in training and residents and fellows now being organized, it is reasonable to assume as you hire your house staff, as you hire your attendings in the future, they are going to come, at least some portion of them, with some union experience. And that may be positive experience, that may be negative experience, but the fact is that the clinical staff and that provider staff have taken to unions in a way that they historically have not, and it has the potential to change the industry. You might be asking yourself why they're organizing more. Well, there's been a significant reduction in autonomy. There are very burdensome tasks. Physicians, particularly young physicians and novice physicians who are getting used to new tools and resources and don't already have efficiencies in their jobs. And that lack of autonomy, those burdensome expectations, the unfortunate reality is it is consuming their time while at work, consuming their time that would otherwise be spent at home, and that work-life balance is being negatively affected by those things, and therefore they're looking for a third party to help them alleviate some of the struggles. The other thing I would say is that organizing in general has been on the rise, and as disparity in wealth and disparity in income have been more and more topical in our political discord and the discussions that you see, on the news. People are much more aware and much more interested in finding out how organized labor and a union may be able to help them with that disparity.
Fascinating stuff that Jeremy was talking about there, and I think it's not something that we talk about enough in human resources, especially in the HR sector. So definitely run over to his session. We're halfway through the clips right now. I want to take a moment to pause. You can access all of these at industryweek.phenom.com, or you can just find them on phenom.com in the resources tab. As I mentioned, we've already talked about retail, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, and we are in the midst of healthcare, which brings us to our next clip from Yvette Hansen, who is Director of DEIB and TA at Baylor Scott White Health. She was one of my favorites. These are all my favorites. I picked the clips, so of course they're my favorites. But in this clip specifically, she talks about how when it comes to candidates, the process does not start when they land on their career site, when they click apply. It really starts with simple outreach, with education. And as someone in the social media sector, it really fascinates me to think of candidates that way, to think of brand recognition being so important. And then she talks about how you have to automate the process for everyone, because people are going to access your career site at 3 o'clock in the morning, because people are going to apply for jobs at 5 o'clock in the morning when some folks haven't even logged in yet. You definitely want to check out this entire session, but here's a clip from Yvette explaining a little bit more about their process and how they are reaching candidates.
We've been challenged by our CHRO, John Frampton, to really think about how we're reaching out to the folks before they even apply. So we don't even consider the starting process at application. We think our reach is our starting process. So that's where the employee voice campaign comes into effect. So how can we get this content developed faster? And so we look at different pieces of technology to really help us reach the masses. A few years ago, we partnered, or actually it was a year ago that we partnered with a vendor to help us with our job postings. So we analyzed one job posting. And so we have over 2,000 templates that we use for our job postings. And we analyzed one and we found bias, and our readability score was really high. And as everyone knows, you want a readability score to be low. And so we partnered with this vendor who would help us identify what bias exists in our job postings, what exclusionary words are in there, improving our readability score. But it also allowed us to pull in our competitors' job postings so that it could give us an analysis of how we were promoting our roles against how our competitors were promoting their roles. This really helped us because it could automate the change that you made to one template to all the templates for the same job code. So it just really allowed us to be able to do that really quickly. If we go back a little bit further, and we talk about our employee referral program for our internal team members, right? So we had a very manual process put into place where there was no transparency. The report backs were just like Excel spreadsheets. So we put into place some technology to help streamline that effort. And the change is fantastic. It's remarkable how much a piece of technology that automates a process, that provides transparency and complete reporting and connection points to our finance, to our CRM, to our ATS is fantastic. We saw an over 200% increase in referrals. And now I think referrals remain the top 5 sources of our hires. Very often, most months, it's the top 3 source of hire across our system. So that's been really promising for us.
Referrals will always be successful, but that was super interesting. Talking about their processes, how they're moving through the funnel, and everything in between. Baylor Scott White is and a little bit the correct people in our organization. Moving right along to day 4 of Industry Week, which was manufacturing and transportation. Our next clip is from Jackson Kirchis, who is the founder of Happiness Means Business. He focuses exclusively on really employer engagement and how to get folks engaged, the consequences that come if employees are not engaged, specific to the transportation and manufacturing industry. He also talks a bit about the 4-day work week, which is fascinating to me, to say the least. And maybe that the 3-day work week is on the horizon. Definitely check out more from Jackson, but here's the clip from him on Industry Week last week on the Manufacturing and Transportation Day.
Yeah, well, I always like to start by pointing out, look, that my role at this nonprofit, so we are the leading U.S. nonprofit that does employer engagement and education around the topic. We also help advise on policy. And I say, look, it's the 4-day work week. Work for is a great name, but it's not always that cut and dry, okay, that we all work 4 days or you all work a certain amount. Really, it's about any meaningful reduction in work time without a corresponding reduction in compensation. So what you see in most of the pilots that have been done around this topic is you have people reduce their hours by, let's say, 20 or so %. But implicit in that, there is an agreement that they will be compensated the same amount they were before. And if and only if they achieve the same amount of prior productivity, right? So it's 80% of the hours for 100% of prior compensation and 100% of prior productivity, right? Because if we were just going to say, all right, well, we're cool, everyone's going to make 20% less money and the business will be 20% less productive, obviously that's not going to work. But what we tend to find is through initiatives like this, especially because we see how AI, but just technologies more broadly have made individuals more productive, there's not really much lost when employers make this transition. And so, I sometimes say, I'm not here to argue you should do it. It's more just something you should consider because, Jamie Dimon, the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, probably, people say the president of the United States is the leader of the free world. I think it's probably JP Morgan Chase CEO, Jamie Dimon. He says, hey, I could see employees working a 3-day week because of all of the advances in technology. Steve Cohen, a hedge fund manager, the owner of the New York Mets, actually just started investing a lot of money in leisure activities, investing in things like golf courses, because same thing, he says the future of work, this movement really seems to be picking up speed. So it needs to be something folks are thinking about. Now, getting into some of the implications here in the data, right? So there have been several pilots done across pretty much every different continent, hundreds of companies, thousands of employees, and there's some sort of highlight reel findings that we can talk about with this. So we tend to see generally equal or slightly improved productivity throughout the trial. We see equal or slightly improved revenue. And so in one of the last pilots, when you looked at the year to date, kind of during the pilot revenue versus that same period in the prior year, there was a 38% increase in revenue. Now, this is important to point out. I don't think it's fair to say that the reduced work time caused a 38% increase in revenue, right? Because you're probably thinking, well, it had to do with the prior growth rates and the fact that this was like 2 years ago, the economic conditions were quite favorable. Things were growing really rapidly coming out of COVID. So all that's true, right? But the bottom line is it's not hindering revenue growth. You saw a consistent boost to recruiting and retention, right? Which I'll tie back to thinking about the theme that is relevant for this tight labor market. Attrition, so people leaving work voluntarily, was down about 57% in one pilot. And we saw a 12% increase in employees throughout that pilot. So companies were continuing to grow and hire new people. And then least surprisingly, probably, if you're thinking about a 4-day week or reduced work time, somewhat obvious, massive benefits to employee experience across the board, 71% lower burnout, 43% improvement in mental health, right? So pausing there, we can already start to see how this can be a differentiating factor, particularly in an industry like transportation and manufacturing, where it can be difficult to attract and retain talent and kind of compete for talent and shake things up and look for innovative new ways to get things done and do the work and to be productive. Well, we see this initiative as an opportunity here to really invest in employee experience and compete on things other than just total compensation, right? Because I know plenty of people who would take and myself included, if I were still in corporate, would take a massive pay cut to work in this sort of environment, work fewer hours, prioritize work-life balance. So there have been a couple companies as well in this industry who have done this. One that comes to mind is Advanced RV. For the sake of time, I won't give too much detail on those case studies, but they are a small manufacturer in Ohio that outfits these custom RVs. They successfully implemented this program, and the CEO who I talked to said it was really about just delegating, setting standards for velocity, quality, productivity, and empowering staff and teams to meet those goals. And then on the larger company side, I'm excited to see how this comes out. If you look in the news, it should be coming up in, I imagine, a few months. Unilever in New Zealand piloted a 4-day week, and it was so successful that they've expanded it to Australia. And so they're now trialing that process. So, overall, when we think about especially Gen Z and some of these newer generations, a lot of what they value is employee experience. I want to have a work to live rather than live to work. And so this whole idea of reduced work time is a very innovative and very novel approach that may be a useful tool to attract and retain talent, shake things up, and seek productivity in new ways without necessarily losing out on productivity or revenue.
Lots of benefits mentioned there about the 4-day work week and individuals that are finding success, companies that are finding success with pilots and things like that. Certainly something to keep an eye on in the future. I know a lot of folks on this won't make that call. They probably would all be in favor of a 4-day work week, but it is exciting to hear some of the benefits for employees down the line. One quick editorial note. He mentioned Steve Cohen creating a lot of golf courses. I don't think that is for us regular folks to enjoy golf courses. It's simply because the New York Mets love playing golf in the fall and they don't have anything else going on. Moving forward, though, we did have a fantastic session with Meredith Wellard of DHL Group. She is the VP of Talent Management, Learning, and Growth. And she talked about the importance of meeting folks at the right time with the right thing in the right place. And when you think of manufacturing and transportation, oftentimes, especially with an organization like DHL Group, folks are on the go, right? I know my father works for a transportation company. He is only home 2 days out of the week. So having content that is readily available to him on his cell phone or anywhere in between is so vital. And she also talks about continuing to optimize it. Just because you've created something that you're very proud of and you've put it on your career site doesn't mean that folks are finding it right away. She talks about the importance of SEO and being optimized for search engines. So without any further hesitation, here is Meredith explaining some more successes that DHL Group has had.
But my point is, it's about bringing the right thing to the right person at the right time. And what we've discovered is the more that we continue to enhance the relevance of our content, continually updating it, continually targeting it at the right person, the more visibility we're getting in Google search. So our search engine optimization is really optimized. We have search engine optimization, and many times we are at the top below, just below the sponsored ads. So I think having a tool that can enable us to do that lets us do it real time, not having to go to someone and ask them to do it for us. This has resulted in greater visibility, many more, more than double the number of interested people coming to our career site, and therefore increasing the number of clicks, the number of applies that we get. From a percentage perspective, it's gone up tenfold, so it's significantly improved. And I think just to sort of wrap that up, it's about having the right tech, having the right strategy, and really working hard to focus on achieving the performance that you're looking for. And if that is to be the first one on the Google search, then make sure you're tracking it and maintaining it and, doing clever things to get there. So
thanks so much, Meredith, for joining us. It is truly important to show up on the Google search. I was joking with a couple of my colleagues today. We use a tool from Adobe, and the only way that we find it is to go through Google. So if that's what we use first, your jobs and your career site should be first on the list as well. If folks, you're looking for talent to add to your industry. Moving right along to the last day of Industry Week. It was day 5. It was a Friday, and it was finance. And I know what you're thinking. No, we did not just play the TikTok clip over and over again. I'm looking for a man in finance, 6'5". We didn't even play that once. So I just wanted to mention it here because I think it was a huge missed opportunity. Instead, we had, again, a plethora of fantastic guests, one of which is a man in finance. His name is Ryan King. He's EVP and head of talent acquisition at Regions Bank. And he talked about really connecting with the marketing and communications teams within your business to ensure that everyone is on the same page. He talked about talent communities and how vital they are if roles aren't open yet, to stay in touch with that group of individuals who are already interested in your, organization, already interested at roles at your company, and automating communication with them. So without any further hesitation, here's a man in finance, Ryan King.
We're also solving critical business challenges through recruitment automation. We learned quickly through our Phenom analytics that leads and candidates wanted us to communicate often about our culture, but TA can't be the sole brand champion. Our TA team and the entire organization are now considered talent marketers. We all own the responsibility of delivering our employee value prop to the external candidate audience. Every business strategy moving forward must take TA marketing of the EVP and people strategies into consideration. We also now have buy-in from marketing and communications, which is critically important. Our job category pages and microsite strategies have allowed us to share more in-depth information with job seekers about what it's like to work in our different business groups. We're able to engage and convert distinct candidate pools through recurring campaigns, such as asking people to join our talent community, nudging leads to finish their application or even start their application, nudging referrals to do the same, to apply and to finish their application. We're also using automations to help the business through our automated assessment conversion. We are able to engage and convert distinct candidate pools through recurring campaigns, such as asking them to join our talent community, encouraging leads to either start or finish their application, also encouraging referrals to either start or finish their application. These are things that we couldn't do in the past. From the business perspective, we're able to automate assessment conversion through sending assessment reminders, through auto-tagging candidates who pass the assessment in our CRM, through communicating to those who have an incomplete assessment, asking them to finish, and also communicating with those people that have failed the assessment, encouraging them to come back and complete the assessment once again. Our career site is now best in class for candidate experience. We've leveraged AI to provide an optimized candidate experience that keeps warm candidates in our funnel. Career site visits for us now average roughly 80,000 per month, 108,000 in 2024 alone. And 66% of those are first-time career site visitors for us. We have consistent applicant flow. We average historically 16,000 applicants a month, 21,000 a month in 2024. And that is more than enough for us to meet our hiring demand.
It's super exciting to hear 21,000 applicants accessing Regions Bank, right? When he mentioned that there really wasn't a TA-focused team earlier on in his session, to where they're at today, where they are a well-oiled machine. 66% of their visitors are new visitors each month. Super exciting stuff. Our last guest that we're going to show today, we had a plethora of other, almost an embarrassment of riches of other guest speakers during Industry Week that we weren't able to include today. So you'll definitely want to check out the replay. But our last clip that we're going to show is Amber Lawrence, AVP of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Mortgage Bankers Association, or MBA. And she talks about really the need to diversify your talent pools, that we're looking for more than just a 6'5" man with blue eyes in finance. In order for individuals to really find success, that not everyone has access to the resources that some may. And she talks about really some of the benefits of AI from this, some of the things that she's cautiously optimistic about, and also the she truly stresses the importance to still be people focused, because when we talk about finance, it is a people business. You're trusting folks with your money, with your livelihood. So she talks about leveraging AI, but also focusing on the people side of it. Without any further hesitation, here's Amber.
Sure. I'll start broadly. So the easy answer to this question is probably keeping up with and staying abreast on like the new technologies being developed, AI especially, or artificial intelligence. And it can be so useful, right, to assist with our productivity. And I even use it. I'm cautious with how rapid the development is, though, and it's impacting the perceived necessity of certain jobs. And I think ultimately we can't abandon the people focus in employment spaces in our approach to hiring. It's no secret that many of the industries that are out there, including our own and including in my own office, we have a multi-generational workforce and a workplace. And we've got to ensure that individual contributors and leaders are able to connect in some of the most basic ways, like phone calls, face-to-face meetings, emails, and more. There's some disparity on how the different generations value each of those things. And we've got to meet the moment on establishing expectations that consider the way people access technology, their capacity, their capabilities, and their lived experiences. And if you'll give me a moment, I read an article today that talked about a recent report of how leaders want more and better in-person staff meetings. And I'm thinking to myself, like, that's incredibly basic, right? Of all the advancements that we've had, it's like the face-to-face thing that kind of resonates. And further with that article, it highlighted that not everybody is going to be satisfied with every hybrid arrangement, because that's the world we live in, right? And according to, I think it was a survey within the article, it seems that especially to be true for millennials. And while leaders say Gen Xers and Boomers generally prefer in-person meetings and that Gen Zers prefer virtual gatherings, they're less certain about millennials. With millennials, 44% of them saying that they prefer in-person, while only 35% say they prefer virtual meetings. So there's a little bit of like exhaustion when it comes to that virtual environment. And I think to bring it back to connect it to some of the other things that I've said, the point that I mentioned earlier about thriving off of relationships and establishing and fostering trust. So in my opinion, it's kind of like getting back to the basics almost, even though we've had all this advancement and all this technology that helps support kind of the menial tasks and the repetitive things. But we've got to get back to kind of establishing that in-person relationship and that trust.
Yeah, technology can't replace culture, right? And
Right.
So that's really one of the main areas where, obviously you can hear the passion in your voice here, and I know, some of the initiatives that you've been doing. So,
that was John Deal at the end. Shout out to him. He's a stud. I thought he was going to continue his thought there for a second, but I loved everything that Amber was saying. We have to get back to people first. John mentioned at the end, technology can't replace culture. Culture is something meeting face to face. Now, that doesn't always mean in the office. That could mean phone calls, as Amber mentioned. That could mean Zoom meetings, whatever it may be. But maintaining people focused, I think, is something that is an overarching theme throughout talent acquisition right now, where we can have, the cream of the crop technology like Phenom, but at the end of the day, people are eventually going to want to talk to other individuals. They are eventually going to want to see who they're working with throughout the day. And it is something that we all need to focus on. Overall, Industry Week was a fantastic success. It was 5 days across all 5 of those industries: retail, healthcare, hospitality, hotels and restaurants, manufacturing and transportation, and of course, finance. We couldn't show them all. There simply was not enough time. We promised you that we would show you the highlights in under 60 minutes, and we've done so with 9 minutes to spare. So I hope that everyone gets a chance to check out the full clips of Industry Week. They are available in bite-sized content. If you just want to watch one session, if you just want to watch some of the product stuff that we mentioned, trust me, it's good. You won't want to miss that. You can access it all at industryweek.phenom.com. We have plenty of other events coming up. I know AI Day is coming down the pipeline here at Phenom. I think it's September 12th. We will also be at all of the fall events. Name of fall events will be there. Gartner UK or Reimagine, HR UK, HR Tech, SAP, everywhere we will be. And you can always talk to us about your specific industries and how our technology can help. But in the meantime, I hope that everyone has a safe, happy, and healthy weekend. Football is back this Saturday. It's preseason. I know it doesn't matter, but I am excited nonetheless. And I can't wait to see you next week, next Thursday, noon Eastern time, for another brand new episode of TXL. But in the meantime, have a safe, happy, and healthy weekend. Thanks so much.